He couldn't talk until he was 4, but he changed the world forever. This is the amazing true story of Albert Einstein, a quiet boy who became the genius of the century. Albert Einstein's story. Albert Einstein is one of the most famous scientists in history. His ideas changed the way people think about space, time, and the universe. But did you know that he had a slow start in life? He was not a top student in school. In fact, many people thought he was not very smart. But Albert proved them all wrong. Albert Einstein was born on March 14, 1879, in a city called Ulm in Germany. His family was Jewish, and his parents were Hermann and Pauline Einstein. His father sold electrical parts, and his mother loved music. When Albert was born, he had a large head and was very quiet. His parents were worried about him. Albert didn't talk until he was 4 years old. When he finally started speaking, he would repeat his sentences quietly to himself. This made people think something was wrong with him. But Albert was not stupid. He was just thinking deeply before speaking. As a child, Albert loved to ask questions. He wanted to know how things worked. One day, his father gave him a compass. Albert was amazed by how the needle always pointed north, even when he turned it. This small compass made him curious about invisible forces like magnetism. It was the beginning of his journey into science. Albert went to school in Munich, Germany. But he didn't like the strict rules. The teachers wanted students to follow orders and memorize facts. Albert liked to think for himself. He didn't enjoy learning by force. Some teachers even told him he would never be successful. Even though Albert didn't like school, he loved math and science. He taught himself difficult subjects at home. By the time he was a teenager, he was already reading books by famous scientists like Isaac Newton. At the age of 16, Albert decided to leave school in Munich. His family moved to Italy, and he later joined them. He wanted to go to college in Switzerland, so he applied to the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. But he failed the entrance exam. He did well in math and science, but not in language and history. This didn't stop him. He studied for another year at a school in Aarau, Switzerland, and then tried again. This time he passed the exam and got into college. At the Swiss Institute, Albert studied physics and math. He was smart but didn't always attend classes. He liked to study on his own. His professors didn't always understand him. Some even thought he was lazy. After graduating, Albert had a hard time finding a job. No university wanted to hire him as a teacher. Finally, with the help of a friend, he got a job as a clerk at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern. His job was to look at new inventions and decide if they were useful. It wasn't exciting, but it gave him time to think. In his free time, Albert worked on scientific ideas. In 1905, something amazing happened. Albert wrote 4 important papers in just 1 year. Scientists call it Einstein's miracle year. One of these papers introduced the theory of special relativity. In this theory, Albert explained that time and space are not fixed. They change depending on how fast something is moving. He also came up with a famous equation, equals mc squared. This means energy, E, equals mass, m, times the speed of light, c squared. This simple-looking formula changed physics forever. His other papers talked about tiny particles of light called photons, how small particles move in water, Brownian motion, and more. These ideas were new, strange, and brilliant. At first, many scientists didn't believe him. His ideas were too different. But over time, more people started to understand. They saw that Albert was a genius. Albert became well known in the scientific world. In 1909, he finally got a job as a professor. He taught at universities in Switzerland, Germany, and Prague. By now, people were calling him one of the greatest thinkers of his time. In 1915, Albert finished his theory of general relativity, which explained how gravity works. This theory was even more powerful than his earlier work. It said that massive objects like the sun bend space and time around them. It was a new way to understand gravity. But how could anyone prove such a strange idea? In 1919, during a solar eclipse, scientists tested Einstein's theory. They looked at how light from stars bent around the sun. The results showed that Einstein was right. This made him world famous overnight. Newspapers around the world wrote about the man who bent light. After the success of his theory of general relativity in 1919, Albert Einstein became a global celebrity. He wasn't just famous among scientists. Ordinary people around the world knew his name. Newspapers called him the new Newton. Crowds waited outside his lectures. Everyone wanted to see the man who had bent light with his mind. But Einstein didn't let fame change him. He was still simple, kind, and curious. He didn't care much about clothes or hair. In fact, he became known for his messy white hair, no socks, and relaxed style. He believed in using time for ideas, not for fashion. Einstein was also a man of peace. After seeing the destruction of World War I, he spoke out against war and violence. He believed that problems between countries should be solved through talks, not fighting. He joined peace groups and gave speeches about harmony among nations. But while Einstein was becoming famous, trouble was growing in his home country, Germany. In the early 1930s, a dangerous man named Adolf Hitler rose to power. Hitler blamed Jewish people for Germany's problems. Albert Einstein, who was Jewish, became a target. The Nazis hated his science and his beliefs. They even called his ideas Jewish lies. Einstein knew he was in danger. In 1933, he left Germany and never went back. He moved to the United States, where he found safety. He began working at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. There he continued thinking, teaching, and writing. Even though he was far from Europe, Einstein worried about the war that was coming. In 1939, he learned that German scientists were trying to make a powerful new weapon, a bomb using his famous equation E=mc². This bomb could destroy entire cities. Einstein didn't want to help build weapons. He loved peace, but he was afraid of what Hitler might do. So, with other scientists, he wrote a letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. He warned the U.S. government about Germany's plans. This letter helped start the Manhattan Project, a secret plan to build the atomic bomb. Later, when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, Einstein was deeply sad. He said, "I do not consider myself the father of the atomic bomb." He felt guilty, even though he did not make the bomb himself. After the war, he worked hard to stop nuclear weapons from spreading. He wanted the world to choose peace over power. In America, Einstein became more than just a scientist. He stood up for civil rights, freedom, and justice. He spoke against racism and joined efforts to fight it. He even invited black artists and leaders to his home in a time when racism was strong in the U.S. People respected Einstein not just for his brain but for his heart. In 1952, after the death of the first president of Israel, Einstein was offered the chance to become the next president of Israel. Imagine that, a scientist being asked to lead a country. But Einstein politely said no. He said he wasn't the right person for politics. He preferred to stay in his world of thinking, teaching, and learning. As Einstein grew older, he continued to work on new ideas. One of his dreams was to find a unified field theory, a single explanation for all forces in the universe. He worked on it until the end of his life, but he never finished it. Still, his efforts inspired many scientists to keep searching. Einstein also enjoyed simple things. He loved playing the violin, sailing on quiet lakes, and going for walks. He didn't care about money or awards. He once said, "Try not to become a man of success, but rather a man of value." On April 18, 1955, Albert Einstein passed away in Princeton at the age of 76. Even on his last day, he was working. He had pages of notes near his bed, filled with thoughts about the universe. His brain was later studied by scientists who wanted to know what made him so smart. But maybe it wasn't just his brain, it was his way of thinking, asking, and imagining that made him different. Glowing star Albert Einstein's legacy. Albert Einstein gave the world more than theories and formulas. He gave us a new way to think. He showed that even the biggest problems can be solved with a curious mind. He taught us that imagination is just as important as knowledge. Einstein once said, Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. Today his name stands for genius. His face appears in books, cartoons, and even on t-shirts. Schools are named after him. His theory of relativity is still studied in classrooms. His ideas are used in GPS, lasers, and even in understanding black holes and the Big Bang. But most of all, Albert Einstein is remembered as a kind, humble man who used his mind to help the world, not to control it. He was not perfect, but he never stopped learning, questioning, and dreaming. Clapperboard final lines for your video. Studio microphone. Albert Einstein didn't speak until he was 4. But his words and ideas now speak to the whole world. Quiet boy. A brilliant mind. A gentle heart. This was the story of Albert Einstein, the genius who changed the universe.